So for the past couple of days, we have been staying in Slidell, Louisiana, which is a city that I once lived in. In fact, this is the city that I lived in when Hurricane Katrina hit. But if you couldn't tell, and if you can't tell right now, this city doesn't really have a whole lot going for it. It's very boring, it's very slow. The population is pretty much constant. It's been around 20 to 30,000 since we left. In fact, it might have even gone down. So why did we decide to move there in the first place? Or rather, why did my parents decide to move us there in the first place? Well, the main reason why is because the city that we were in before, while there are many worse places to be, wasn't really safe anymore. It reached a point where thievery, people breaking into backyards, stealing our stuff, hearing gunshots, things of that nature, became more of the rule rather than the exception. And actually, with my grandpa's advice, my dad made the decision, along with my mom of course, to go ahead and move us to a better environment, so to speak. So while this place, Slidell, is very boring, very slow, and again, as you can see, doesn't really seem to have a whole lot going for it, that was kind of the point. It's much better to be in a boring place than it is to be in a dangerous place. That said, we are doing the exact opposite today, because we are going to go to a couple of neighborhoods in the New Orleans area that are nothing like Slidell, in the worst way possible. And speaking of danger, we are now driving over Lake Pontchartrain, and best believe that I am staying in this middle lane the whole entire time because I can't swim, so I'm not taking any chances. But this lake right here that you see on the side of this bridge is actually the lake that flooded the city that I lived in. So this lake right here flooded Slidell, or more accurately, Slidell became part of this lake. And you can see there is a lot of water there. So you can just imagine the level of chaos and devastation, especially in a quote-unquote non-flood zone like the neighborhood that I lived in. But once we get across this lake, we will be in New Orleans proper, and we're going to explore both New Orleans proper and one of its surrounding cities that I lived in. Welcome to Kenner, Louisiana. This is where I lived for the first year to maybe year and a half of my life on this earth. Now, Kenner isn't exactly the worst place in the world to be, but it is very far from the best place in the world to be as well. Hence why we moved to Slidell. That said, the neighborhood that we'll be going to after this neighborhood is significantly worse, and I'm sure that the statistics will back that up as well. And there are even worse neighborhoods than that. But I'll get more into that later on in the video. For now, I want to show you where I come from. And I guess I'm using that term a little bit loosely because realistically, I actually come from Louisville, Texas. But where I also come from. So we're about a mile out, and you can see, once again, the neighborhood isn't bad per se. And I definitely just kind of ran that light, but we're just gonna go ahead and go for it. Hopefully I don't get pulled over or anything. Louisiana does have the highest incarceration rate in the world. I don't know if I said that in any recent videos, but this is not a place where you want to play around with the police, because you will end up in prison for a very long time. But this particular neighborhood was, and still is, right next to New Orleans Airport. I don't exactly remember what the airport's called, but it's next to the airport in New Orleans. And I think that at one point before I was born, there was actually a plane crash in or right next to this particular neighborhood. So just a little fun fact. But obviously, having been so young, I don't remember anything about this neighborhood. My sister does. My sister has some pretty vivid memories of this neighborhood. Obviously, my parents do. But We're gonna go ahead and take a left up here. And you can see, compared to Slidell, it's not really looking quite as upscale, so to speak. Not that Slidell is particularly luxurious, but compared to this, it's definitely a step up. And again, the statistics will back this up as well. I really wish this car would hurry up so I can get across the street. And welcome to the neighborhood. So you have a Brothers Food Mart with a fried chicken spot. That's a telltale sign that you're in a pretty rough area. When you start having these no-name brand corner stores, you can see these wires look kind of sporadic. The way this guy is walking in the street, he's walking kind of sporadically. I don't know what he has going on or why his arms are so long. He got some long ass arms, an NBA player. But we're gonna take a right turn right here, and right here on the left side on Tifton Street, this house right here is the exact house that we used to live in. I really hope you can see this because we're not coming back once we leave, but that is the exact house that we used to live in. And this right here is a dead end, but you can see it's a pretty small house, and it's actually a duplex, believe it or not. So we did used to rent out the other side of the house. And just a quick little story, I think the last person that my parents rented the other side of the house to, she was crazy. She was just batshit crazy, and somehow she managed to slip past their interview questions or whatever. And to make a long story short, she tried to burn the house down. And somehow she only burned her part of the house down, and her dog died in the fire. So RIP to her dog. But you can see this neighborhood is definitely not the best neighborhood by any means. And that is the reason why I am filming this in POV style, from the safety and comfort of this vehicle rather than walking and talking like I typically do, because I don't really feel comfortable walking around this neighborhood, and I definitely don't feel comfortable having her walking around this neighborhood. What do you think of this neighborhood so far?
Yeah.
No comment?
It's looking a little rough.
It's looking a little rough?
Especially these wires.
Yeah.
They're just everywhere. Like a spider's web.
Yeah, there's no plan, it seems like.
Yeah.
They just put them up.
And then there's there's more garbage here on the ground as well.
Yeah, it's another telltale sign.
And the roads are worse.
Yeah. These roads are ridiculous. It gets a lot worse than this though.
Oh.
Not just in terms of the danger, but in terms of the infrastructure. When it comes to the roads, I mean, you can see that parts of the curb are literally just falling apart. And then, for example, right there on that corner, there's supposed to be a house there, but it's just an empty lot. And you kind of see that a lot in New Orleans, especially after Hurricane Katrina. You just have these empty lots, but nobody really outside like that, playing or anything like that. And again, is that the same guy from earlier? How did he get there so quick? Yeah, I don't know about this. There's no way he walked there that quickly. But even as far back as 2001, when we left this neighborhood, it was already starting to get a little bit sketchy. And I can only imagine that Hurricane Katrina just made things substantially worse. So you can see you just have this empty lot just for parking. What's the point? You see the plane taking off in the distance there. This neighborhood is definitely, once again, not the best. And in neighborhoods like this, if you're ever in a neighborhood like this and you're driving, you want to try to avoid doubling back down the same streets multiple times, especially if there are people outside. especially if those people are standing on the street corner and they look like they have no particular place to be. Because generally speaking, those people are involved in a lifestyle that you want no parts of, and by driving down those streets twice like that, you're indicating to them that you're scoping them out, and that's just not something that you want to emanate, energetically speaking. You do not want to give off that kind of signal to those kinds of people. But now we are going to go back to New Orleans, and I'm going to show you the neighborhood that my dad grew up in. I don't know the exact house. Hopefully we can find it, but we're going to go ahead and pull over somewhere outside of this neighborhood, and I'm going to set the destination on the GPS, and we're just going to go for it. If you're from Europe, and in particular Western or Northern Europe, so the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Norway, Sweden, etc., you're about to witness a level of poverty that you've likely never actually witnessed before, unless you've been to a third world country or similar. This level of poverty should not exist in a country as wealthy as the US. And yet in a place like New Orleans, this is the rule rather than the exception. Now, the neighborhood that you're about to see is the neighborhood that my dad grew up in. And pretty much everyone from the previous generation before him, so his mom and all of her siblings, their parents, etc., came from Mississippi. So for them, moving from Mississippi to New Orleans was a big move. That was what unlocked a lot of opportunities for them, which in turn unlocked opportunities for my dad and his generation to put my generation in a better position. It's very interesting to really put that into perspective and see how a city like this, which has been the murder capital of the US many, many years, can provide people with such great opportunities. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna do too much talking because I really need to lock in. Because with this neighborhood, especially with me having this GoPro on my head, I don't really want to be doing a whole lot of lollygagging, so to speak. This is the kind of neighborhood where you drive through once and then you get up out of there, especially because I have my girlfriend with me. I know she's probably a little bit spooked right now because I've been talking this place up. But again, there are much, much worse places you could be in than this neighborhood right here, especially here in New Orleans. But again, compared to Europe, I mean, there's just nothing like it, honestly, both in terms of the quality of the infrastructure and the crime rate, specifically the murder rate. This neighborhood that we're going to be going to is called Gert Town, and just the name alone just makes me feel uncomfortable. Gert Town. But this is where my dad grew up and spent pretty much his whole entire childhood. If I recall correctly, he spent his whole childhood in this neighborhood. And yet somehow this place has bike lanes. Tell me how this neighborhood has bike lanes and Louisville doesn't, Slidell doesn't. These more well-to-do areas don't have bike lanes, but Gert Town does. It's even protected. There's a protected bike lane over there. Now I'm really salty. This makes no sense at all. But we're about half a mile away, and the street is called Broadway Street. Now I don't know exactly what house it was. I'll probably know it if I see it and then I can point it out. But there was a point in time where we did come back to visit because my dad wanted to show us the house, and there were these people outside, just like I was talking about earlier. They looked like they had nowhere to be. There's a Cybertruck right there. Very interesting. Maybe this place is a little bit gentrified now. It might have changed. But those people did not look very happy to see us. And as a matter of fact, I guess we were in front of the house a little bit too long for their liking, and they actually approached the car and asked us why we were there. And then my dad explained to them that he wanted to show us, his children, where he grew up. But make no mistake about it, this place is not sweet by any means whatsoever. You can see you have a sign right there, welcome to historic Gert Town. And this place right here definitely has a lot of character. I don't feel particularly comfortable stopping at these lights either, because New Orleans has a really big issue when it comes to carjacking. And actually my girlfriend didn't know what carjacking was, so if you're from Europe, I'm gonna assume that maybe you don't know what it is either. Basically, carjacking is where someone walks up to your car with a gun usually, because I don't know how you can carjack someone without a gun, and they force you to exit your vehicle. They take your place in the driver's seat, and then they drive off with your car and whatever is in it. In this case, her. So I'm gonna try not to do a whole lot of stopping in this particular area, but you can see the vibe is a lot different than Slidell. It's a lot different than Louisville. You have the graffiti, things of that nature, but then there's a Porsche. So again, this place might be gentrified now. They might have changed the game a little bit. But then New Orleans is also very tricky in that you can be in a very poor area and suddenly be in a very rich area. But this is not a rich area. If this place is gentrified, this particular part is not gentrified, because you can see these roads are absolutely treacherous. So this right here is the neighborhood that my dad grew up in. Probably breathing in whatever fumes this thing is producing. All types of stuff. So this is Broadway Street. We're gonna actually continue going straight. And again, I'm gonna try to make this very, very brief. Very, very brief. Because as you can probably tell, this is not the type of neighborhood that you want to spend a whole lot of time in. Now, fun fact, this street right here, I don't know if you can see that street sign because it's faded. This street is called Pine Street. There was a point in time when my dad actually had a second house that he rented out here on Pine Street. But after the whole ordeal with the lady trying to burn down our house, I guess he sort of lost his taste for real estate, and I don't really blame him. But you can see this place right here, it's kind of bordering on third world country, especially with these crazy roads.
It's wild.
It's very wild indeed. So I think his house was somewhere over here actually. It was on Broadway Street. So it was one of these houses. I just don't know which one, but it would have been on the right side. And there's actually a police station right here. You can see the police station is the nicest building in the whole neighborhood. Interesting. But empty lots. I think he actually lived in that house right there, the lower house, 3308. You see it right there. And I hope you saw it, because we're leaving. We are getting up out of here expeditiously. You see there's a really nice park right there. Nobody's there though. I don't blame them. If I lived here, I probably wouldn't want to go outside either. But let's go ahead and make this turn and get up out of here. So Nadia, coming from the Netherlands, have you ever seen anything like that before?
No.
You haven't?
No. I feel like the difference between rich and poor is a lot bigger here.
It's a lot more pronounced. How did you feel being in that neighborhood just now?
I felt a little bit like uncomfortable to look around.
Yeah.
Like if I look too long in a certain direction or something, it would be not ideal.
Yeah, that can become problematic. That's actually something before we came to this neighborhood that I informed her about, is that when you're in neighborhoods like that, a lot of times when you drive past people, they're gonna look at your car. That's another telltale sign that you're in a bad neighborhood, by the way, is when you drive past them and everybody is just eyeing you suspiciously. Very bad sign, and you should probably leave. But whenever they do that, you do not make eye contact with them. Don't make eye contact with them. Don't look back at them. Don't eye them suspiciously. It's just a very, very bad idea. I don't even think I need to explain why that's the case. But
Also, I noticed that there's actually people outside sitting at their front porch or whatever.
yeah,
And I don't see that in most films.
no. It's kind of an interesting thing because here in the US, generally people in lower income neighborhoods tend to spend more time outside. So they're out on the porch, they're talking to their neighbors, playing with their kids, etc. Whereas in the more well-to-do neighborhoods, people are indoors or whatever they're doing or wherever they are, I don't know, but they're not outside. They're not outside in the same way as people in lower income neighborhoods. But honestly, that's probably the last time that I'm going in a neighborhood like that, at least willingly and knowingly. Because just being in a neighborhood like that can put you in imminent danger. Now, we went in broad daylight, so I mean, that was during the day. Imagine at nighttime, just spooky. But if you have your head on straight, you can make it out, and my dad is proof of that. The problem is, you shouldn't have to make it out, especially when you live in the wealthiest country on the whole entire planet. And also, before you get on me in the comments talking about, Jordan, why would you put your beautiful Dutch girlfriend in danger by taking her to this dangerous American neighborhood? Listen, the reason why we started this van life journey, the reason why we are doing this to ourselves, is because we want to see America. And that's the reality of parts of America. There are very, very beautiful parts and some very not so beautiful parts. And I want to show her both. Granted, I think she's gotten a good enough sample size of the not so beautiful American parts. She's laughing because I look absolutely crazy right now. I don't know if you can see, but I look absolutely insane.
The way it's crunching your eyebrows.
We're not going to talk about that right now. But the point is, I showed her what she needed to see.